Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are embarking upon a new topic, which means that we have completed a major topic of Caturvyuhas. Heyam, heyehetu, hanam, hanopayaha. And in discussion of this, we covered the entire metaphysics of Patanjali's system. And taking recourse to the philosophy that Patanjali has expounded is really the means of yoga. The Patanjali's philosophy becomes the means of yoga. And therefore it is sadhana pada. And these days we understand this as sadhana pada, that is chapter on practices. And we have made it clear that this is not a chapter on practices, these are practices on means. And one must become familiar with the philosophy of Patanjali, inculcate the philosophy of Patanjali that has been expounded in metaphysics of it, the ontology, teleology, cosmology. So that gives the basis for practice. So philosophy of Patanjali is something foundational, and that's why it becomes means. It offers the means of yoga. So we covered the metaphysics of Purusha and Prakriti, ontology of Prakriti and Purusha, then the cosmology and the purpose behind creation, because we are part of creation. So enormously huge topic was covered with advent of the Caturvyuhas as expounded by Vyasa. And therein we came to realize that the cause of sorrows in philosophical sense, not in empirical sense the sorrow or psychological sense the sorrow, but metapsychological aspects of sorrows. Those sorrows are avoidable. The cause of such sorrows was said to be conjunction of drashta and drushya. And the conjunction took place for bhoga apavargarthata. The conjunction was not just negatively impelled, but both Bhogarthata, Apavargarthata. So we discussed what is Bhoga and what is Apavarga, and how the conjunction is having both the sides, positive and negative, constructive and destructive, acceptable and rejectable. The conjunction is not altogether rejectable. It is also acceptable. There is upadeyata because of Apavargarthata. And then we discussed the nature of Kaivalya, nature of moksha, nature of nirvana, the state of it. Although it is not a state, but the condition that is sought after in spiritual pursuit, which is the fourth purushartha called moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha are four purusharthas, and the supreme purushartha is said to be moksham. And then what is that moksham? What is that paramapada? What is nirvana? What is kaivalya? What is emancipation? What is salvation? The spiritual samam bonum. And then we discussed the means of liberation, which was said to be Aviplava Viveka Khya. So Viveka Khya is the measure to be taken for Apavarga and for Moksha. Now, having mentioned that, there is a flow to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, because if Viveka Khyati of the nature of Aviplava Viveka Khyati is measures as the means of Kaivalya, then what is the means for Viveka Khyati of that nature? So first of all, Viveka Khyati should be there, and then it will be of the class of Aviplava Viveka Khyati. So the next obvious question is, what has to be done, or what is the way, or what are the ways and means to attain Viveka Khyati? So we are coming to the means of the means in one sense. Means of supreme spiritual summum bonum was mentioned. So that means it is means of the end. And now comes means to means. What are the means to reach the means and get the means and acquire the means? So these are means of means, which is the Sutra 2.28, Yoganganushthanat ashuddhikshaye jnanitiptihi avivekakhyate. So Yoganga Anushtanam is for two purposes. One is ashuddhikshaya, therefore all the encouragement for bhoga will be set aside. By kleshas being attenuated, by klesha vrittis being attenuated, by vasana shamanam. So that is ashuddhikshaya. And the second purpose and function of ashtanga yoga anushtanam is jnana deeptihi, the flame of jnanam, not flame of knowledge, but flame of jnanam blazes forth to the extent that Viveka Khyati would be had. Aviveka Khyati. Up to Viveka Khyati, whatever wisdom evolvement is needed, wisdom blooming, blossoming is needed, all that comes about by ashtanga yoga anushtanam. So therefore Patanjali is mentioning means of means. The means of end was Aviplava Viveka Khyati, and what are the means to these means? That is Yoganga Anushtanam. So that's how Patanjali comes to the Sutra 2.28, Yoganga Anushtanad ashuddhikshaye jnana deeptihir aviveka khyate. By Yoganga Anushtanam, ashuddhis are neutralized, lessened, dissipated, weakened, and then destroyed and annihilated. And secondly, the Viveka Khyati would be dawning by all the phases of knowledge, structure of knowledge raised up, pinnacle of that being Viveka Khyati. So pinnacle point of knowledge is Viveka Khyati. This is a point to be noted. In structure of knowledge, it can become lofty, and the paramount condition, parakashtha, is in Viveka Khyati. So Yoganga Anushtanam will give a very bit of jnanam for the structuring of jnanam needed for culminative phase of it called Viveka Khyati. So it does two things. One is remove the ashuddhi, remove the defects, remove the taints in chitta, remove the dirt of the chitta. So it will do that purificatory act of chitta on one hand, and on the other hand it will give jnanam in chitta. And jnanam to culminative point, ultimate point, beyond which there is no evolvement, ultimate evolvement, final evolvement, finale of evolvement, which is called Viveka Khyati. So, how to get Viveka Khyati would be the obvious question for a mumukshu who is seeking liberation, moksha, Kaivalya. How to get liberation would be the $1,000,000 question for a seeker, ardent seeker. So his quest has been answered by this sutra and by the purport of the sutra. And that is how ashtanga yoga gets mentioned in Patanjali's text. In the light of our times, we should become clear that ashtanga yoga is not just for mundane, worldly, personal wellness and well-being. It is not for health of body and mind. As today we conceive ashtanga yoga as something that gives a health to body-mind complex. Ashtanga yoga has greater potentials, and it has potentials to bequeath, bestow the final human spiritual samam bonum, or the spiritual endeavor, samam bonum of spiritual endeavor, pinnacle point in spiritual endeavor, which is moksham. And of course, there is nothing beyond moksha. Moksha is suprema purushartha. There is no purushartha which is beyond that, more than that, greater than that. That is the greatest purushartha. So, ashtanga yoga can do up to that. Whereas today's ashtanga yoga only gives you fitness in body, fitness in mind, so that your mundanity will be carried out uninterruptedly, unobstructedly. That is why we are doing ashtanga yoga. We want our mundanity to be unobstructed. So in the light of what yoga means today, we have to understand what yoga means classically. It is for ashuddhikshaya, that is kleshanasha, not just cosmetic clean condition, but thorough, complete, accomplishing purificatory process. And jnanam, culminative jnanam. So this is why ashtanga yoga gets mentioned in Patanjali's text. Totally different than why yoga gets mentioned today, or ashtanga yoga gets mentioned today. Today's ashtanga yoga, as I said, is only for to have fruitful mundane life, accomplished mundane life. That is why we are embracing ashtanga yoga today. But why Patanjali mentions is altogether different. So the point to be noted with the very first opening term in the sutra is yoganga anushtanat. Yoganga. Yoganga. What is Yoganga? What are Yoganga? Which will be mentioned in the next sutra, and we are all familiar with it. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. These are called Yogangas. Because they are 8, it has come to known as Ashtanga Yoga. So Yoganga Anushtanam of what? Anushtanam of Yogangas. What are Yogangas? Yamaniyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are Yogangas. Now Anushtanam means what? No language in the world has such a word or a translation available to this word. No language in the world has translation for this particular concept, idea, notion and term, Anushtanam. So today it gets mentioned as reverential practice. Anushtanam is not reverential practice. Anushtanam is Anushtanam. Now we should not venture to translate this term. We have to understand what is implied in Anushtanam. But we cannot translate it. And therefore, in all the languages, the word Anushtanam must be maintained as it is and not venture to translate it and try to evolve some predication which would justify. That would never ever happen. So Yoganga Anushtanat. So it needs to get investigated as to what is really Anushtanam. So at the outset, let me tell you, Patanjali doesn't mean or doesn't mention by practice of Ashtanga Yoga, Ashuddhikshaya will take place and Avivekakhya Jnanadipti will take place. Because this is how it is rendered these days in the light of present scenario. Ashtanga Yoga practice does Ashuddhikshaya and gives Jnanadipti up to Vivekakhya. This is how it is rendered. Anushtanam has been devaluated absolutely to almost close to 100% devaluation by rendering it as practice, and maybe in order to compensate meagerly reverential practice. Reverential practice doesn't make it Anushthan. So at the outset, let us understand this, that reverential practice, sincere practice, dedicated practice, wholehearted practice, uncompromised practice doesn't make it Anushtanam. Anushtanam is Anushtanam. So we should not try to add predicates to Yoganga practice, Yoganga sadhana, that it should be reverential, it should be sincerely done, it should be intently done, should be diligently done, should be reverentially done, should be uncompromisingly done. No predicate will explain what is Anushtanam. Now, Anushtanam is such a word which has roots in the Vedic Dharma or Veda Dharma or Vedic Dharma, Vedic Samskruti and Vedic Sadhana Pranali. Anushtanam is word that comes in Vedic lifestyle, which is of course totally extinct today. So, we are trying to deduce, extrapolate as to what is anushtanam. We will not be able to justifiably explain what is anushtanam. At the outset, let me tell you, anushtanam kind of practice doesn't come everywhere. The word anushthanam comes in very few practices, and therefore this word would come in a joint word such as karmanushtanam, dharmanushtanam, mantranushtanam, yoganushtanam. So there are few practices where it can become anushtana. Any and every practice howsoever enriched will not become anushtana. So this should be understood at the outset. Anushtana will come only for karma, dharma, mantra and yoga. And therefore we have this concept of karma-anushtan, dharma-anushtan, mantra-anushtan, yoga-anushtan. It doesn't come elsewhere. Elsewhere, nothing, no practice can ever become anushtan. Like if you are very proficient in some endeavor, you definitely have exalted practice there. You can be having a vocation, profession, hobby, in which you might really exalt. And you can stand out that you are first time ever a person to be doing it. You might reach a height which is first time ever reached by mankind. It can be any profession, vocation, act, pursuit. But they will never become anushtanam unless they are karma, dharma, mantra, yoga. Elsewhere we have practices called sadhana. So in music there is swara sadhana. There is no swara anushtanam. There is swara sadhana. There is swaropasana. Swara upasana. Upasana can be there. So swara sadhana, swara upasana will be there, possible, but not swaranushtanam. So in the field of music, you can become a celestial being called Gandharva. You can get that title as Gandharva, which is a celestial category of beings. But there will be no anushtanam there. So you can have various practices as a human being, but they will not culminate or they will not get into the framework of what is called anushtanam. As I repeatedly told you that it is only possible in karma. Karma-anushtan, dharma-anushtan, mantra-anushtan, yoga-anushtan. Elsewhere you might be top class painter, top class artist, top class musician, a top class academician. You can really reach the top in any field. But it should be noted that that will not be anushtanam. Anushtanam is not possible there. That's why it is unique word which has come in Veda Dharma. Veda Samskruti, Vedic Samskruti, Vedic Samskruti. Because Vedic Samskruti has given importance to karma, dharma, mantra and yoga. So one cannot be giving example of what is yoga anushtanam, because anushtana kind of yoga is not practiced. So there are various ways of practice. Yoga abhyas, yoga sadhana. So these are the grades of practice that you can get. Somebody might be doing yoga sadhana, someone might be doing yoga abhyas, but we don't come across somebody in yoga anushtanam and yoganga anushtanam. No example can be cited. Whereas the yogis of the Lord, out of many yogis, out of thousands and thousands of yogis, somebody would be embracing anushtana mode, anushtana channel. Not all yogis would be touching it, but few of them, exalted ones. To name someone, it could be Yagnevalkya, it could be Vyasa. So these are all seers of the Lord, and they could be in the Anushtanam caliber grade of yogic practices. Otherwise, commoners, commonly, generally, universally, we will be all practicing yoga. So somebody will be doing with dedication, the score's over. So somebody might be doing uncompromising, score's over. So there are various channels. So at this point in time, we should understand the channels available. First of all, we must learn yoga. So first of all, we have to learn yoga. So yoga vidyarthi. Because unless we become vidyarthi of yoga, unless we become seekers of yoga vidya, you cannot be in yoga sadhana. So we'll have to have certain studies needed for vidyarjanam. So yoga vidyarjanam. So we will have to start with yoga vidyarjanam. Earning, acquiring yoga vidya. That's called yoga vidyarjana. So there can be ashtanga yoga vidyarjanam as a starting point of essential yoga. Then after having done vidyarjanam, then as a part of it also, integral to it, there will be yogadhyayanam. You will be studying yoga. So yogadhyayanam, ashtanga yogadhyayanam. Because yoga vidyarjanam implies that there must be yoga vidya adhyayanam. Adhyayanam means formal study of the science of yoga, philosophy of yoga, technology of yoga. So we'll have to be studying yoga. We'll have to become students of yoga. And after having become students of yoga, we will be qualifying to become yoga sadhakas. Then we will take the yoga as sadhana practices, and then perhaps we will be going for yoga sadhana. And then acquire or go through all the rudimentaries and preparatories and orientations and initial aspects, and then go for yoga abhyas and become yoga abhyasi. So from yoga vidyarthi to yoga abhyasi, try to understand the journey. And after having accomplished yoga abhyasa, then your yoga sadhana will also be heightened, enriched. But for yoga to become anushtanam, it must become either dharma or dharmya karma. Because in dharmya karma only you can have anushthan, not in any kind of karma that you can be having anushthan. So we are trying to imagine what anushtanam might be. So basically, as I said, anushtanam will only come in karma, dharma, mantra and yoga. And therefore we are familiar with these concepts like karma-anushtanam, dharma-anushtanam, mantra-anushtanam and yoga-anushtanam. In the four kinds of yoga with which we are familiar, in the sense we have heard about it, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. The Jnana-anushthana is not there, but Jnana Yoga-anushtanam is there. When we refer to Karma-anushtanam, it is Karma Yoga-anushtanam. When we refer to Mantra Anushtan, it is Mantra Yoga-anushtanam and Yoga-anushtanam. So there are certain set practices to be, say for example, carrying out mantra-anushtan. Mantra japa is not anushtan. Mantra japa is not anushtan, but there can be mantra anushtanam which has certain stipulations, certain set rules and framework which must be adhered to, and remaining within the framework, one can do mantra anushtan. Just regularly doing mantra japa, it doesn't become mantra anushtan, because that is part of daily activity. At appointed time, perhaps you will do your mantra sadhana, you will have some incantations, you will have some japa done. That doesn't become anushtan. Anushtan has a framework which really arrests your life, and it keeps you within the framework, and you cannot step out of the frame. If you step out of that frame, then you are not in anushtan. So anushtanam or anushtana is for stipulated time. You cannot have lifelong anushtanam. So we have a concept called tapas, which is a period, in the sense period of 12 years is called tapa. We are aware of what is tapas, but a period of time of 12 years is also called tapa. Tapa. Anything done rigorously, uncompromisingly, regularly, in disciplined way, with pros and cons adhered to. If something is done for 12 years, it is called tap. It is called tapa. It's a time span of 12 years. So also we have heard about some Mandikand sages who have taken recourse to this. I recall Sri Ramdas Swami of 16th century, who did observe for 12 years a particular kind of life, not moving from that location and from that place, not moving at all, being in the same location. So for 12 years he did not move from that location where he went for his anushtanam. What was the anushtanam? It was 13 crore japas of Sri Rama Jaya Rama Jai Jai Ram in 12 years. So in 12 years he was supposed to complete 13 crores of japa. 13 crore means 130 million. 130 million japas of Sri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Ram to be completed in 12 years. So if you really make calculations and computations, he was almost doing 20 hours of japa in 24 hours and nothing else. So for the 4 hours were for his sleep and other essentials, and 20 hours a day he was in this japa, and therefore he could complete that in 12 years, the 13 crore or 130 million japas, and whereby he became Samartha Sri Ramadas. That was anushthan. He really did not do anything else for those 12 years. No Sunday, no holiday, no privileged leave, no sick leave. Whatsoever kind of break, not there, absolutely not there. For those 12 years, each day of the 12 years was so important that he could not be escaping that japa that he had allocated for each day. So you can now work out what must be allocation of japa for each day of 12 years. To complete 130 million in 12 years, in 365 into 12 days, how much japa must be allocated for each day? So this is mathematics that you can work out and understand. And to accomplish those many japas, he had to allocate 20 hours nearly. He had only 4 hours left for his sleep, etc. No shopping, no marketing, no sightseeing, no going outstation, etc. For 12 years he stuck at one place. And he had some other observations as well. To be in that japa, he had some observations, such as you get up in the morning, you have your morning shaucham, you have your morning snanam, and then you sit for your practices. So the cleanliness, purity must be maintained throughout those 20 hours. Maybe possibly he had to take bath 2 or 3 times, because he must have taken break in those 20 hours for a couple of minutes. It is difficult to imagine that he sat 20 hours every day of 12 years. It cannot be even imagined, somebody sitting for 20 hours a day for 12 years. So, Anushtanam has so many other observances which must be very strictly adhered to. He cannot be having a leisure time, cannot be watching a movie, cannot be looking into a newspaper, cannot be looking into news magazine. Anushtanam is something like that. So he did that Anushtanam. There is also concept of Gayatri Puruscharanam, where it is again Anushtanam. In Gayatri Puruscharanam, one has to accomplish 2.4 or 224 lakhs, that is 2.4 million japas. 24 lakhs of japas, 2.4 million japas in one round, and such consecutive 24 rounds. So 2.4 million into 24. So many Gayatri japas are to be carried out in 12 years. So understand what must be the life when in such Puruscharanam, that is called Gayatri Puruscharanam, which is also anushtanam. So, anushtanam is something that we have to just imagine and not fancifully try to aspire it and to be practicing it. It's only to be understood, anushtanam, because before anushtanam we have to go through so many stages which I told you just now, from yoga parichay to yoga vidya dhyayanam, yoga vidya bhyasa, then yoga vidya dhyanam, and then yoga sadhana. So many steps are there before one embarks into yoga anushtanam. It's a qualification needed to be in yoga anushtanam, yoganga anushtanam. So the point is, anushtanam means the whole life. For each day, every day is given certain conditions which cannot be violated. So anushtanam will take place for one day, complete one day. So you have to strictly adhere to those pros and cons and the conditions mentioned, which you have to observe without compromise. Then there can be anushthan for 3 days. 1 day anushthan, 2 days anushthan, 3 days anushthan, 4 days anushthan. So it can be of some days, it can be a week. So it can be a week-long anushthan. It can be Navaratra, 9 days anushthan. So it can be a paksha of 15 days, fortnight. So anushthan can be of a day or multiple days or week. And anushthan can be of 1 year and multiple years. That means one should be able to adhere to those principles. Now, there are certain principles that you cannot be adhering those for more than a day. Now we know that certain principles we can really remain in the framework of principles for a couple of hours. We need a break thereafter, because it demands too much kind of rigorosity and sincerity. We cannot be doing for more than a couple of hours, maybe hour. That's also a big thing for us. So then we want little liberty so that we can get out of the frame and come back into the frame once again next day and start our serious practice. So that adherence is so important. Certain rules and regulations, pros and cons are there. Are you able to adhere those? If you are able to adhere those for 3 hours, it can be 3 hours anusthana. If you can adhere to those for 1 hour, it can be 1 hour anusthana. Anusthana can be of limited time, but however, only condition is that certain frame is given and you cannot really break the frame even for a moment. So we have to create a framework within which we can be working sincerely. Yes, you can be sincere, but how long will you be sincere? So sometimes you want libertine time, and again you will be coming to discipline. So that discipline aspect is so important in anushthan. Anyway, yoganga anushtanam is something that we can only imagine. We can only understand yoganga practice. So at this stage, towards the end of the session today, let me say, the sutra is yoganga anushtanad ashuddhikshaye jnana diptihi avivekakhya, but not yoganga bhyasat ashuddhikshaye jnana diptihi avivekakhya. It is not yoganga bhyasat, it is yoganga anushtanat. So we only know what is practice. We can understand what is practice, perhaps we can have experience of what is practice of ashtanga yoga. So you are all familiar with ashtanga yoga practices. Yama practice, niyama practice, asana practiced, pranayam practice, pratyahar practice, dharana, dhyan, samadhi practiced. So we are familiar with the concept of yoga-abhyas, yoganga-abhyas. The sutra is not using the word yoganga-abhyasat ashuddhikshaye, but yoganga-anuштhanat ashuddhikshaye. Yoganga-abhyas will not give you this grade of fruition. Ashuddhikshaya and Jnanadipti Aviveka Khya. So anyway, there is much to really inquire into what is anuштhanam. And before understanding what is anuштhanam, we should know what are the various channels of ashtanga sadhana. In what different channels can we really make a pursuit of ashtanga yoga? So some practical advice will come if we decide to embark upon it. So let us try to understand various channels of practicing ashtanga yoga. But let it be for the next time, for the time being. Namaskar all of you.